Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the British Esports stream. Today, we would normally have a Friday Fun Day session, but in honor of the YANA campaign, which is the You Are Not Alone campaign, today we are doing a special section featuring our Women in Esports Committee panel members. We're going to be having a short panel today hosted by Yinsu Collins, who's an amazing host, esports journalist, and of course our League of Legends game advisor as well. We also have Sue Lavasani, Freya Spears, and Morgan and Alice from the British Esports team as well. So, as I said, we would normally have our normal Fun Day Friday stream, but today we've got Women in Esports. So I'm just going to show you a short video demonstrating the kinds of things that they get up to. Here we go. All right, that's brilliant. Right, so yeah, as I said, we've got Alice today. She's our schools and colleges liaison officer, dealing with the north of England, and obviously that's part of my role as well. So we share the same position. Morgan Ashurst, who's our marketing manager, deals with a lot of our content, things that you'd see on the British Esports website, all the socials, all of our sort of video content is all organised by her and her team. We've got Yinsu Collins, who's a esports journalist, a host as well for our championships last weekend. If any of you guys checked out Saturday's game, you would have seen her there. Fantastic job, thank you very much. And of course, our league game advisor as well. So we've got Sue, who's from Face It, and is the accounts manager there. And then we've also got Freya Spears, who is a professional interviewer, CSGO host, and is also an assistant producer at Face It. So let me just tell you a little bit about the You Are Not Alone campaign. So what it is, it's a campaign to basically support vulnerable families and people in need during this lockdown. Obviously, COVID-19 has hit us really hard, and this is quite a stressful period of time for some people. But what it's focusing on really is those families that needed help, kind of before lockdown already, and were stuck in dire circumstances. They're trapped at home now. They might be in sort of abusive circumstances or at risk of neglect. And this charity is basically set up to offer some frontline support to those families, to those children, and provide them somewhere to show their kind of gaming spirit and gather in a community where they don't feel quite so alone. Obviously, that's in the title. You are not alone, but it's essentially a page where you can go donate. It's a great cause. Shout about it to your friends and family because obviously it's really important, and we'd love to get some donations from you. There will be donation links down in the chat, also in the chat that way, and I will get the YANA page posted for you as well, so you can find out more information. So today's event, today's stream basically is a way for British Esports to support the campaign. Tomorrow is actually the main event. They'll be starting from around 10 a.m. And they'll be running streams all throughout the day until the very early hours of the morning, playing lots of different games and with loads of different ways for you guys to get involved. So go check those links out as well. I'll post them in a minute. But for now, I'll pass you over to Yinsu.
Thanks for the introduction, Elliot. I know this is not the regular programming of your Friday Fun Day, but I promise we will make it fun. I am joined by a group of amazingly talented women who's also part of our BA Women in Esports committee. I know you already introduced themselves a little bit, but I thought I'll let them also introduce themselves so you guys know who's who. I guess I'll start with you, Alice, if you can just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yes, so I am the Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer, like Elliot mentioned earlier. I primarily deal with schools and colleges in the north of the UK. And what we do at British Esports is trying to encourage lots of different education providers to realise the benefits of esports and how they can get involved in our British Esports Championships, which we run throughout the academic term for students aged 12 plus. So we do Rocket League, League of Legends and Overwatch.
Brilliant. I think we'll move on to Morgan next.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm the marketing manager for British Esports. I actually got into esports through competing almost 10 years ago, which makes me feel very old. But I was in a mixture of female teams and mixed teams, learned how to brand myself through all the press opportunities that came from that, learned marketing skills in basic other industries. And then I landed my first esports-based role at Fierce PC, which is a system builder, which then has led into my role at British Esports.
Oh, wow. Sue and Freya are both from Face It, but I'll go to Sue first.
Hi, I'm Sue. I'm the account manager for Face It. I handle all sponsor obligations and sponsorship obligations for both of our platform and the events. We are the leading global esports platform, and yeah, that's pretty much my day today.
And I'm sure most of you, especially if you're into CSGO, will recognize Freya, but I'll let Freya also just tell you a bit about what she does.
Thanks, Shinsu. Yeah, I work primarily in Counter-Strike as an on-camera talent. I started off doing interviewing about 2 years ago and have developed on to be a stage host and a desk host as well. And I also work with Face It as my sort of behind-the-scenes role as an assistant producer, which I think is great because I get to do a little bit of on-camera stuff, but also help build the events that we run, which is yeah, fantastic.
I think that actually takes us nicely to our first discussion point, which is how do we all sort of get our role into esports and how do we get to the position we are now? I guess I'll start with you, Freya, as you were talking about also being able to be on camera and being behind the scenes. How did you land your role at Face It?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story. I feel like when you speak to anybody from esports, they always have very strange ways of getting into it. It's sort of a weird set of coincidences. With me, I started off as a fan of esports, primarily CSGO. So I was watching a lot of Counter-Strike tournaments, playing a lot. And myself and my partner, we sort of thought, why don't we start a little website to sort of write up our sort of thoughts and views on certain tournaments, do reports, do interviews with players, which we did just for fun alongside our university studies. We're both studying English, so we both really loved writing. And then one day, Face It, we're running a competition to send somebody over to, I believe it was ECS season 4, which was hosted in Cancun. So there was no crowd, no fans in attendance. They wanted to bring somebody to the event to sort of relay the experience to the fans at home. So I thought, screw it, let's enter. Why not? We just had to create a short video explaining why I should be sent there. I didn't win, but actually every cloud has a silver lining because they messaged me and asked if I wanted to start doing some interviews to their YouTube channel and get involved in some of their content, which then evolved into becoming a stage host for ECS season 5, which was weirdly a tournament that I'd attended as press and as a fan to watch. And I'd always loved going there. That was in the SSC Arena in Wembley. And yeah, it's kind of just evolved from there. Obviously, the Face It Major was just after that. I literally graduated, and the evening of that, I went over to work at the miners in Twickenham, which is fantastic, an amazing experience. And yeah, I've kind of just sort of been with Face It from then on out. I can also do I also do freelance tournaments as well, so it's great to be able to get the sort of mixture of experiences that esports brings.
Do you know what's really funny? Because you mentioned the Cancun competition. The person they did send is actually my partner.
Yes,
Jake. They sent both to there, and you've definitely got the better deal because he retired from CS:GO quite quickly after that.
He's doing League of Legends, right? And
Yeah,
he's doing very well in that.
But it's just funny how things turn out. But like in esports, you know, everybody knows each other, and
Yes.
everybody at some point, you know, cross paths. I just thought that's quite a funny story for me to add into. But I guess I'll move that on to Sue because, you know, I'm sure Freya's story has probably been retold a few times because she's, you know, one of the talents and it's something that people do like kind of know more about. Whereas I think your role is kind of more behind the scenes and maybe you had a different route than how Freya kind of went about getting her role.
Absolutely. It started around like 2013 when I was just streaming the game called Infinite Crisis. That turned into a casting opportunity. That was like my very first working experience in esports. Then late 2014, I got offered to help with Face It when the integration with Dota 2 was launched. And that kind of further developed into me working in tournament operations and helping out with open qualifiers for Dota 2 majors and TIs. And at that point, I was working at events like DreamHack for the first time, working at booths and getting that kind of experience and just meeting people. And that really solidified, the passion even more. Like, I really want to work here now. And when 2015 came around, I was working full time for Faceit, and I was in the middle of finishing my IT degree. I'm from the Netherlands originally, so I was just working remotely. But my role within the company further grew, and I was offered to relocate. And that was in May 2016. I packed my 20-kilo suitcase and I went to London, and I officially started working for Faceit full time. And I was starting out as a customer support price management role. Further, that went into being a campaign manager, and now I'm an account manager. Even before that, I always loved playing video games. I was just not good enough to be in a pro role, unfortunately. But the passion was still there to constantly keep playing, and I kind of hopped around games a lot. I've played Counter Strike, I've played RTS. I started playing Source from and Red Alert 2 from internet cafes, and yeah, I just hopped around everywhere. I just knew I'd love to work in the space and meeting the people that work here every day. That's the first thing that I knew I would love to do.
You actually relocated, right? Like completely
Yeah,
uprooted your life
yeah.
to take a risk for esports. Do you think that's something that people should do more of? Is it worth it to do something to take a risk that big?
It was definitely a leap of faith. It was yeah. Looking back now, a lot of people that I talked to, they were like, "Why did you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Uh, it was definitely a moment where it's like, I'm gonna leave all of my friends, I'm gonna leave all of my family behind, and that only came to my mind like I think a year later. I just knew this was the thing to do. But I can definitely recommend at least anyone to go for an experience where you feel like the floor is taken away from under your feet. I think that helps a lot with to explore your like who you are as a person a little bit. To kind of figure out what you want. If it doesn't work out, you did it. You can always go back. So yeah, definitely can recommend.
I think that's something that maybe you can relate to, Morgan, in terms of like risk taking in esports. So tell us about how you got into this.
So I originally started competing when I was 15 years old. So I believe I was part of the first female Call of Duty team to attend an event. So the first event was EGL4, which was hosted at the Emirates Stadium, which is it seems like a lifetime ago now. But it caught a lot of eyes, especially because, I mean, the first female team to attend. And then on top of that, it was in an FPS game. So I think initially we got quite a lot of press, and initially joined a esports organization called Team Foreign, which was really prestigious at the time. They were a Norwegian organization and are no longer around, unfortunately. But it kind of just started from there. Years of playing in, all female teams, and eventually I ended up just competing in mixed teams, which is then when I started to build more of a prestigious title, especially in that space. Although I was semi-professional, at some point, I say it's embarrassing, but I got the title of Female's Best Call of Duty Player years ago, so no longer a thing. Just to make that clear, I haven't touched COD in a while, so no 1v1 requests, please. But yeah, it all kind of started from there, and because of the decent amount of press opportunities that came from that, I ended up doing a documentary with Channel 4, also done a campaign with Belong by Game, and then like Vice interviews. There was numerous different things that I got involved in, and I had to very quickly learn how to brand myself. So whilst I was young and didn't really know what I wanted to pursue, I knew that marketing was something I've already dabbled in. So I decided to pursue this in numerous other industries. So estate agency marketing, automotive was, several years of my life within that industry. And then I finally managed to land a dream role at Fierce PC, which then turned into their very own esports organization called Fierce Esports, which then now I'm here at British Esports as the marketing manager. So it's been a crazy journey, but I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. No, we have to play COD now because I didn't actually know that, and now I'm really, really happy because I've
There's a
been.
reason I don't bring it up.
You really should. Honestly, I'd have that as my Twitter bio if I was ever called the best or something, because that's really amazing.
Yeah.
So Alice, you're gonna have to try and top that one.
I'm not sure I can top that. I'm definitely not the best COD player or anything like that. My background's primarily from Dota 2 and volunteering. So back in 2014, my friend at university helped me build my PC, and he said you should play Dota 2. So I did, and got a little bit too into it, I'd say. Realized I still wasn't nowhere near good enough to go in a team, but I made a lot of friends out of it through going to like Epic LAN and other offline events and Discord communities. So I really got into that sort of community and wanted to make more of it. So whilst I was at uni, I did a lot of volunteering for events. I used to work at like a cinema, running film screenings, things like that. And it kind of made me realize, how can I link this to how much I love gaming and the competitive side of things. So whilst I was at my year abroad in America, I joined the Esports Society there, realized how huge it was and that a lot of people get involved in it from different like sort of grassroots. And I just carried on at the end of my final year thinking, how can I do this? So I got a full-time job afterwards, did some volunteering on the side. I applied to Epic LAN, Insomnia, anything I could get my hands on. It was a bit awkward because my parents didn't really understand what it was. And they're like, why would you want to get a job in that? What is that? And then as soon as I tried to explain to them, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That'd be cool to get a job in that. So I was like, okay, that is now my task. And then British Esports came on with their like pilot for the championships, which I was lucky enough to get involved in, and then in the inaugural year as well. So having worked on that and gaining all the experience and the volunteering I needed, primarily remotely as well, because I live in the north of the UK, I found when I was looking, it was either remote experience you had to get or be down in London or somewhere further down south. So I was really lucky to get this remote admining job for the championships. And when the job came up for schools and colleges liaison officer, I applied for it with the experience that I got through being a volunteer, and lucky enough to get it. So it landed me to where I am. It's a bit of a more unusual route because I'm primarily like customer service, hospitality background. But because of that experience I got in the volunteering, it allowed me to get into the area I am now.
I think that's what one of the good things about esports is, that it is very inclusive when it comes to accepting diversity in terms of your skill set and in terms of people's passion, because I don't know anybody that work in this industry that doesn't have a story of, when I was a kid, I saw video games meant this to me, and this kind of developed and they became a passion, and now I'm here. But one of the things we do need to talk about is kind of the other side of this issue, where there are barriers and there are things that's restricting people from getting into esport, despite the passion or skill set you might have. And especially I think for women in this space, I'm sure a lot of men also face this kind of issue, but there are certain barriers I think predominantly women will struggle with more, and there are barriers that are kind of put there that other people might not necessarily experience. So I think it could be useful to sort of talk through those, and if you guys have ever experienced that and how you've kind of overcome it. I think one of the ones I can say that is, because I come from a sports background, you do have to prove yourself, not just to kind of to your boss or to yourself, but when you're in a position where you might have fans, or you might have people that read your stuff or watch your content, sometimes I feel like I always have to prove myself just a little bit more than kind of my male counterparts. I guess I open this up to the floor. I don't know if any of you guys have kind of experienced this issue.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think it's also to add that the exceeding of expectations and constantly having to feed into that. That's a lot what I usually see. It's also, the type of criticism that you get, I think, from experience at least. It is having criticism on things that you can't control. So what I had, for example, was like, if I get on Counter-Strike, if you get criticized for a bad smoke, I'll go to custom server. I'll get better on my consistency for smoking top mid. But if you get criticism for being a bad smoke because XYZ, because you're a girl, that's something. What am I supposed to do with that? I don't know what to do with that. So I think that feeds into discouragement, and that feeds into a lot of different things. So even that little bit can be a really big part of it. And I think that's why there's certain barriers. It can either be cultural, can either be specific. In this case, it can be tied to who we are. We are women in esports, and that's definitely one of them that I can think of.
How would you kind of personally, how did you overcome that? Or do you have any sort of advice if people do experience that?
At this point, I've handled everything with humor now. I find it very funny, which helped a lot. It definitely helped a lot. I unfortunately, you do have to get a thick skin, and yeah, there's no one way around it. But having humor as a coping mechanism, definitely helps. And having a place to at least vent about it, I think that's a really important thing. Having to be heard about it, I think that definitely helped me, and to be related to it, knowing that other people go through it, is a big thing. Not only for these types of circumstances, but in general, if you're going through something, knowing that someone is also going through that is already a big step to finding a place to kind of process it.
I completely agree with that. I think, especially when we live in a time where there's so many trolls, and sometimes I can't even tell if they genuinely mean what they say or they just want to get a reaction out of you. But if you respond with, if you even kind of jokingly flame yourself, they tend to kind of go, whoa, okay, well, I have nothing to come back to that. But yeah, what about the rest of you guys? Is that something that you've experienced
I would
too?
say I've experienced it more like in a grassroots sort of sense. So even just not playing online, like Sue mentioned, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because you make an amazing play, but then do a shot call, and then they find out you're either a 12-year-old boy, which they think immediately, or a girl. It's like they either flame you if just because you're a girl, or if it's a bad play, they'll flame you further. But then if you do a good play, then it goes in the opposite direction, and the comments become a bit sexist, like, oh, can I have your Instagram, give me your socials. And so it's like you can't win either way. So I found it's either you mute everyone, which isn't that great an experience, especially for like the online communication that you mentioned, and like it limits the social interactivity. Other than that, definitely a thick skin, I think, and humor is the ways I've done it as well, because otherwise you just get it's really like depressing feeling when you feel like you can't get anywhere with the community. So thick skin's always what I try and promote, but it should definitely get better.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that. I don't know whether you guys have seen on Twitter, there's been a sort of couple of female streamers that have been sort of clipping some of the sort of sexist remarks that they've been experiencing. And as much as it sucks that they've had to go through that, it's actually been quite an interesting experience to see all these women banding together. And actually, a lot of other female streamers or talent or whoever have come out and said, yeah, I've experienced it. It's not cool. And everybody else bands together with them. And I think that's sort of a way that we can overcome it and make people realize that actually it's not okay to do this to anybody on a game.
And I think, I think like female perceptions are really starting to change. I mean, look at Pokimane, and you've got another offline TV member, Lily Pichu, who are both massive streamers and content creators now. And they're widely followed across the board on their Twitch channels and YouTube channels. So it's starting to become more normal to see these females like Valkyrae and all these bigger content creators. So I think it's starting to normalize a lot more now than it used to, especially 9 years ago at my first esports event. That was very daunting, especially at 15 years old. Whereas now it's much more widely accepted by the community. Saying that, it still needs to improve.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, we can mute them, but why should we have to? We should be promoting things to kind of educate people so they don't make these comments, as opposed to kind of censoring people and being like, yeah, you just mute them, it's fine, they're just trolls. But I think, as Freya said, people banding together is probably going to do more good than us just simply muting every single time someone says something. I think I'll throw the next question back to you, Morgan, since you have real kind of competitive experience. But we're not really, I mean, in comparison to the last 5-10 years, I think some people might have projected a rise in competitive female like competitive video games in the female scene and audience. I think we're seeing a lot of the audienceship like rise, but I'm not sure if we're seeing the kind of rise of all female teams or mixed teams at the highest competitive level. As someone who did used to compete, why do you think that is, and what do you think can be done to make sure that we do see more female players?
It's tough to say, because I think I've had a mix of experience in playing in both all female teams and mixed rosters, and I think, you know, just from personal experience playing with all female teams, there's something you have more of a bond, and you understand each other, and there's just a level of trust there that there was never in any of the mixed teams that I played in. If anything went wrong at an event, normally the blame would be shifted towards the female player. Although actually, when you look back at the stats, I wasn't the worst player on the team. Yet, you know, it always kind of shifts towards stereotypes a lot of the time. So it's tough to say how we're able to get more females involved. I think one of the things that is starting now is the debate on whether all female tournaments are the way forward, because if you think about it, I've been involved in female tournaments and then moved to mixed teams, so it's a very good progression route to go. But it's so tough with the stereotypes, and whilst things are still changing, I think a lot of it is just going against the odds. So I think, although I ended up getting a good reputation in Call of Duty for the several years I was involved in it, it took 4 or 5 years for really any of that to sink in, that I'm not in it because I'm an e-girl, which is a very common term used. And it took that long to convince people that I'm in it to actually win. And I want to achieve great things whilst I'm involved in the scene. But that respect took a long time to earn, longer than it should have.
I mean, the ego thing, I think we can have a whole other panel just dedicated to that issue, which I have many problems with. But yeah, I guess Freya, as someone, you know, who is a talent in a competitive esports title, is this something that you'd like to see? Either like an all-female scene in terms of CS:GO, or, you know, more mixed on that sense. I think CS:GO is actually one of the better ones, to be honest.
I was going to say, I've worked at the Intel Challenge in 2019, which was in Katowice at the same time as the CS:GO major was going on in the same arena, which was a fantastic experience. That was an exclusively women-only tournament, but it's one of 2 large ones every year. Unfortunately, it didn't happen this year, but it's a chance for the female team to sort of come together and compete against each other. And for me, as somebody who was working on the stage there, it really showed to me how many women were in the audience in a comparison to a sort of normal CS:GO event. Like, that's kind of been something that I've seen rising over the 2 years that I've been an on-air talent. There's a lot more girls coming to view, and I think, just sort of bounce off Morgan's point there, I do think it will be a longer term thing to sort of come into the scene of women starting off competing when they're younger. I think that's a sort of the big issue for me, is the sort of cultural perception of women playing video games. When I was younger, I only got into gaming because of my dad, and my parents were very sort of relaxed with me doing pretty much anything that I was interested in. So when I showed an interest in video games, it wasn't an issue me being a girl. It was cool. Okay, we'll play video games with her. My dad shared that same interest. But looking at my female friendship group, nobody else played games. And when I sort of got to 14, 15, 16, I started playing predominantly with guys, which is great because I've got sort of, you know, my closest group of friends comes from gaming, which is fantastic. But I think that's, for me, in my opinion, that's where the issue lies, is actually women aren't getting into this young enough compared to the males who've been playing for maybe, you know, 10, 15 years by the time they get to that professional level. And the women just don't have that experience because it's not, you know, encouraged or as accepted in the younger years. So that's something that I think it will take a little bit more time to see those real top level female pros coming in. But having said that, we've got the likes of Giuliano, Zaz, Emmy, who are in the female CSGO scene, who are doing absolutely fantastic things. And I think having those figureheads there for girls to watch and actually encourage them to start competing, because I was in that similar situation. I remember going to, I think it was one of the Cologne events back in 2015 or 2016, and I saw Sue Lee Smix interviewing on stage, and it suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, she's a woman. I could perhaps do that one day. And it didn't really click with me. And that's where I realized the importance of actually having those sort of female figureheads being there, displaying that anybody can do this if they have the drive. So that's something that I think is just really important for girls to be looking up to.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Alice and Sue, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add on from Freya's point about from a younger age. I think it's definitely important. That's what we do at the British Esports Championships, is trying to encourage that grassroots a lot sooner. For example, in our finals that we had all 24th to 26th, there was 3 female students in the actual grand finals, so they won their respective spring and winter seasons. And that was really great to see, that level of involvement, that it wasn't just all male teams, that there's more females getting involved. And there were some other all-female teams that we had in the championships that didn't quite get to the finals. But obviously there's lots of ways for improvement. I think primarily like from a younger age as well, like primary school, there's a lot of more mixed teams to have like in sports, and yet that kind of dwindles out as they go throughout education. So it's our kind of idea to see like, why is that? Why can't we have mixed teams further on, whether it's esports or traditional sports, for example? And I think there's this whole like stereotype from a younger age as well, that like, you know, boys want video games for Christmas and girls might want, I don't know, something stereotypically girly like dolls or whatever it is. I mean, I was never that myself, but because I think that depends on your family that you grew up in, what sort of childhood. Because I always liked getting my Game Boy and then progressing to an Xbox, etc. But it's still that kind of stereotype and sort of stigma that there's like a separation. I think it's definitely getting better, but it's how we try and improve that from a younger age, and get more girls interested. Then we can do female leagues or mixed, like a stepping stone sort of route.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely also, if we could replicate the same kind of hanging out with my friends at LAN kind of feeling, but then for females, I think that will be the best way forward. I think that will already make a big step. It's just like everyone said, it's from a young age. Not feeling like you're committing social suicide is is a great step forward.
Yeah, I think Sue, you can probably agree with me on this, that just something that I love about like being at Face It was seeing the grassroots scene for women as well. Like we've seen the first female to enter the FPL, which is for people that don't know, Face It Pro League, which is sort of top highest competition for pro players, and it's where a lot of pro players find their teams. And so that's something that I really value about Face It, is that sort of encouragement from grassroots, no matter if you're male or female.
Yeah, to be professional, you have to start from somewhere. It starts from grassroots. It goes one way or another. So to build one and to lead into professional, that's just the way it goes. So like I said, if there would be an environment for everybody to come together and hang out like it's a LAN and like you normally would, with everybody there, that would be perfect.
I just had a quick look at the Twitch chat. We genuinely had a troll who was commenting things like, you know, girls just aren't good at video games, which actually kind of satisfied me that they're wasting their time watching this really, really talented, amazing group of women discuss issues, but they feel the need to troll. But I see you.
1v1.
Yeah, I see you, chat. I see you. Before we get onto a Q&A, which we'll have shortly, I'll just come round to you guys one by one and ask you, I guess, what you think is the one thing that maybe we can do to inspire more girls, like we've been talking about, you know, starting from a young age, to get them to play games or get them to be more interested and kind of harness their interest. Yeah, so I guess I'll start from you, Alice.
Yeah, I would say primarily what I've built on already, with the whole starting from a younger age. When I was growing up in school, and like everyone said, it was like you had to kind of commit social suicide to go and play more games and do it professionally. I'd say it's definitely the stigma behind it and how we get over that. So one way would be female-only tournaments. It is a bit of a controversial thing, but from my angle, I'd say it's a stepping stone rather than it's one or the other. So throughout these female tournaments, you know, you could build up more relationships, get more noticed, feel more comfortable, rather than jumping straight into a mixed team and worrying, are they going to make a comment today? Are we going to mix well, etc. I think being able to have like a female-only tournament to rise up, get some great standings, get stats, get noticed, and then that can lead on to like your rest of your professional career or into the esports industry, doing production, whatever you feel like your talent is. I think it could be a great step forward. And then just on top of that, always just content, keep on showing off the great work that everyone's doing in the industry, and that's the best way to showcase all the amazing females we have.
Morgan?
So kind of leading on from what Alice said, I'd definitely say visibility tends to be a big issue when it comes to knowing how many women are actually involved in esports. Whilst I think that there are a lot of more females than people think working in esport businesses, there's still not that many at a senior level. And they tend to be the people who are more in the public limelight. So I think little things like that could make a difference on the actual industry itself. Whereas for tournaments and hosts and seeing more people involved, one way that we're able to help inspire people is through content that we produce. So little things like this stream, and to bigger things, and seeing more professional hosts like Freya and Sue, who do the stage work, and seeing more females involved in the public facing roles, I think is really, really crucial. But also, when it comes to esports organizations, it's also visibility, because essentially a lot of the viewership comes from the teams. So it'd be interesting in getting more female players involved in organizations in some way. So whether this is just through content, whether this is female only teams, who knows? I mean, I know Dignitas, for example, have been in the limelight for years when it comes to Counter-Strike, and their female teams. It'd be great to see other bigger organizations also kind of following in suit. But I mean, I don't think there's ever one solution. I think there's probably much more than just that, but just a few.
Yeah, gotta start somewhere. And Sue?
Yeah, inspiring women that's very challenging, but the main thing that worked for me is feeling encouraged and supported. I mean, everybody already goes through so much that, you know, your parents are critical of spending so much time behind your computer or whatever you like to play. My mom hid my power cable for so many times. But this goes back to the barriers that everyone faces. Some people face more barriers than others, but it's the main barrier. If you're supported and if you're encouraged to do something, that already taps so much into what you would like to do. And if you know what you want, then just go for it. I think that's the best advice that I can give. You know, just don't, if you want to actually go for something, just go for it. If you know what you like and if you know what you're good at, whether it's a game or, you know, a field like Morgan with marketing and me with account management, if you know what you want, just go for it. And I think that's, if we can encourage that and you know, support that and have like create a space that people have an opportunity to express that, I think that's the best way.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. And lastly, Freya?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Sue said about just the encouragement. And I think also from my sort of personal background of actually getting into it, the sort of sudden epiphany that I had when I actually saw a woman doing a role and realized, oh, wait, I could potentially do that one day. I think having that visibility of not just people on camera, but behind the scenes. There are plenty of women that I've worked with, whether they are producers, sort of highlights operators, and anybody on the back end of a broadcast. We've got some incredibly talented women there, and I know that we've included some of them, a handful of them in our esports, women in esports panel. So I think just showing that visibility that actually there are a lot of women doing incredible things within the esports industry, whether that's on camera or off camera. And that hopefully should encourage other women who are thinking of pursuing it, but maybe are unsure of whether they would be accepted or unsure of how they would get into it. Just showing them that it is possible and having that encouragement there. I think, yeah, that's the sort of main thing that I think would drive more women to be involved.
Completely. I think for me, you said when there were just a handful, you know, Smicks or Shocks and, you know, these girls, but now we have a lot coming up, and we have, if you look at the top competitions, it's not just kind of, you know, I guess tokenism anymore. It's genuinely people who are the best at their jobs and they just happen to be women, which I think is the best part about this. We'll just move on to some questions and answers. We've got a few in chat, but I don't know, Elliot, if you want to pick the ones you think are the best, or should I just kind of rattle through them and fire them out?
So I think we've got a few posted in our group chat now. I'm not too sure whether you're able to see it.
Is this, sorry, I have a cough.
It's okay.
Is this in Slack? Oh, sorry, I only use my Slack on my phone, which I know is really weird, but
it's okay.
I don't think I've worked out how to use it because I'm part of loads of Slacks and I haven't worked out how to like change them. Yes, I can see them. Okay. Awesome. First question is from, I'm really sorry if I butcher your Twitch names, but Sir Squawk, That sounds about right. Surf Squawk asks, would you say the barriers tend to thin out as you become more well known in the scene? I guess I'll throw that to Freya like straight away.
Yeah, I think maybe this is something that perhaps only I've experienced, but I don't think I've really ever experienced any barrier per se in the professional sphere based on my gender. So I'm not really too sure how to go about answering this question. I don't know whether anybody else has sort of any opinions on it. But I think for me, just from working with Face It, I've always really been encouraged, and it hasn't really even seemed like my gender is an issue in any projects. I don't know whether it may differ for players. Yeah, I don't really have too much experience in that. I don't know whether anybody else can answer.
So I would probably say they definitely do, although mine was over a long period of time. You've got to think back in 2011, esports was so new. Whereas more and more people are starting to find out about it more. And like I said before, you are starting to see more streamers and professional players, although professional players is mainly in the Counter-Strike scene. We are starting to see breakthroughs in Hearthstone, for example, with the woman that won the tournament. I can't remember how long ago it was. It's relatively recent though.
Yeah.
But over time, it's definitely improved from a player perspective for me over the years. But I reckon if I was to start fresh now, like I did in 2011, I'd probably have a more pleasant experience earlier on. But yeah, that's my experience with it.
I think I'd agree with Freya as well. I don't think I've ever faced that on a professional level, but definitely in terms of like social media, YouTube. I mean, I tend to try not to look at things, but it's funny whenever I write something, I don't tend to see anything negative, but if I'm physically in something, there is always going to be something in there that just, kind of makes you roll your eyes at this point.
Yeah, I always make that kind of big distinction between the professional sphere and the community. I do really think they're two very separate entities. And because esports is such, it's such a modern industry, I feel like we're potentially ahead of the curve in terms of sort of having more diverse groups of people. Like I said, most projects that I've worked on have included many number of women who were there not just because they're women, because they are incredible at their jobs. But yeah, I do totally agree with you, Sue, in terms of sort of the community standpoint. There's definitely work to be done sometimes.
Yeah. Odie did ask a really good question, but I feel like we've answered it. Is how do we get more women competing in esports? But I think we kind of brushed over that, so I'm really sorry, Odie. But thanks for watching. Next question is from ClickQuo TV. This is a difficult one. I'm not gonna lie. Please comment on the pay equity or lack thereof in the industry. I understand there is no disparity. If not, this is another amazing reason why this industry is so amazing. I don't know who's best to throw this question to, so I guess I'll open it to you guys.
So
yeah, from a professional standpoint, from a professional standpoint, I haven't, like Freya said, there's no experience for me to add on this. But again, this industry is very diverse and it's very free in a way that you always feel like you have a platform to stand on. So that's pretty much the only way I can answer that question.
Morgan?
So I was about to say that really I haven't had personally any bad experiences. Whilst I know there are areas of the industry where people have had bad experiences professionally, I've worked for smaller companies, so I think it's kind of helped in a sense. Although there is maybe one or two females within a business, I think both of those businesses have been young as well. So I think normally, stereotypically, a younger audience tends to be more accepting and understanding when women are involved in as a minority, I guess. But yeah, I've heard stories where people have, been told to go clean up when they've been in production, which is from Tasha when we did an interview with her, who works for the Null, works in production, and got told to tidy an area when it's not a job. So I've been very fortunate, and I'm sure quite a lot of us have. But on the flip side, there's some people who haven't.
Yeah, again, I think that's a positive all in all. This next question is actually asked directly to Sue. In generalistic terms, is it about putting yourself in the space and how you can break into to get some attraction, or create portfolio, or apply to said companies? It's quite a wide question, I guess, for you.
Yeah, that is. I mean, we have pretty good resources like Hitmarker. That's one of them to apply for jobs within the esports space. What I can recommend is putting yourself in the space. Go to your local event, see what it's like, see if you kind of like the environment, and think about what you can do to contribute. Because I think that's the best way. If you're good at video editing, then get better at video editing and reach out to people on social media. I think that's the best way to do it. Creating portfolio will be a great way. Showing off what you have to give into the community, because it already is kind of always kind of in a community. When I work at events, when I go to events, it doesn't really feel like work. It just feels like I'm just either meeting new people or enjoying. Well, there is some kind of sleep deprivation aspect to it as well, but I mean, it's you all go through it together, and it's great, and I love it. So in generalistic terms, break into the attraction, just to start from somewhere. It is definitely to start applying. I mean, now you actually have a space where you can apply. That wasn't the case for a while, so I would start from there.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo your points of just doing stuff off of your own back. I genuinely don't think, I'm just thinking through my brain, I don't know anybody, male or female, who hasn't started off in esports by either volunteering, working for free, or building something themselves, even if it's just for fun. Like, if you enjoy making videos, start a YouTube channel. If you enjoy writing, you can volunteer to write for websites. I know that when I was at university, I started the Esports Society at my uni, and it's been fantastic to see people grow and do their own events from that. And everybody's doing that just because they love it. And I think the passion is what really shines through in this industry. So if you can kind of display that, I think then you'll undoubtedly go far.
And sorry, just to add on to that also, the industry is becoming more and more competitive. As you can imagine, esports is massive and more people are wanting to get involved. I'd highly recommend, if you're not able to go through the volunteering route just because the opportunities aren't available, you can also take a similar route to what I've done and start learning those skills, and learning what kind of area of work that you want to get involved in, gaining that experience, and then equally your passion will carry you through to a role later down the line. I mean, it took me 4 years to land a role, maybe even longer actually, to work in esports.
I would say that as well. Like, when I was starting out, I did volunteering on the side of like a full-time job because I wasn't quite sure what area I wanted to go into. And then it was also quite a big thing was networking. So I was really lucky with the volunteering at British Esports to then learn about the future job roles that are available. But it's the same as going to Epicland, Insomnia, any of these big events. Face It, for example, volunteering as an admin there. There's lots of different opportunities to like get to know people, find out different roles that you wouldn't see otherwise. Like Hitmarker is a great website as well for finding out new opportunities. So yeah, it's definitely like trying to find what suits you, and like Sue and Freya said, make a portfolio, just get stuck into it, and then you can really flourish.
I'm not gonna lie, when I first started, I DM'd Fnatic to ask to interview their Rocket League roster, and they said yes. And that's honestly like the beauty about this industry is you can just DM people.
You
and
slid into their DMs.
yeah, I was literally like, I really like your Rocket League roster. Like, can I interview them? And they were like, yeah, come around our office. Like, but I did send that DM to like so many other teams. Some replied, some never saw it, some did. But I think we have an advantage that in other industries you probably couldn't slide into like Brad Pitt's DMs and be like, can I please interview you? but with Fnatic it was fine. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, our next question is from YMJ, who asked, are there some UK women-led esports projects, orgs, etc., that you can point me towards? I think this is probably a question for Alice and Morgan.
So if you're on about esport organisations, I know back in Call of Duty days, which was a couple of years ago, I'm not too sure whether they're still running, but there was Riot Gaming, which was a completely female-ran esports organisation. Whilst they did end up taking on some male teams, predominantly they only took on people within the Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, FPS kind of areas. Whilst I don't know whether they're still going, I don't think there were many more aside from that. But when it comes to esport companies in general, obviously we've got our Women in Esports initiative, which we're 5 members of our committee, which is 5 of 13. But there are also some other great initiatives set up, such as Women in Games, which is more games industry led with female legends, AnyKey. So there are a lot of different similar initiatives to what we do.
I think we're a little bit time. We got a little bit of time left, so I'll just jump into the last 2 questions. Whiz through them quickly. So Odie has asked another question. Do you think the developers have a responsibility to put some of their profits towards the female scene? Interesting question. I think I'm a bit torn on this one, but I'll throw this to you guys first. Sue, do you have any opinions on this topic?
That is a very interesting question. I don't think if you're a female within the scene and you're a developer, I don't think you owe anything. But that being said, if you can give something back, not just something like, your profits or anything, but just to, like we said, highlight it. Why, if you are a female developer into the scene, let it be known, or highlight it. I think that's the best way. Even a small thing. If you can make someone feel like Freya has with Speaks, being like, oh, I can do that, or I can feel relatable to that. If you can get that little bit of feedback, I think that does it all. You don't have to actually pay anyone to do that. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Morgan?
I think publishers, they could do a lot more content around the women that are working within their companies. But I think, they mainly tend to do things like this on occasion, which is like International Women's Day, which, is a themed day. But, that should be something that's continuously done throughout the year. And content is playing a big part in esports at the moment in general. So really, I see that as a really good thing to get involved in. But equally, I wouldn't say they necessarily need to put profits into getting to develop the female scene. But I think possibly what they should do is, it's such
it's
a
tough,
difficult
isn't
question.
It? It's really tough. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe just, I guess, a lot of them are doing it already. I mean, you've got a lot of female champions in League of Legends. You've got a lot of female characters that are or female protagonists being made in games. I think as long as there's visibility, that's the most important thing. But yeah, it's making role models, make your female characters not a stereotypical girl and weak, and make them powerful and strong. It's all how they make everything seen, I guess. Can't find the right words, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just going to move on to the last question before we run out of time. Do you see this changing / opportunities increasing as some less established games open up to esports and games that have more of a female fan base? I guess I'll throw this one to Alice. Yeah.
I mean, obviously I hope that it increases throughout time as there's more esports titles. I don't think it necessarily depends on the game. I think it's more about the communities for the opportunities that come around it. I think there was is it Roller Champions just came from Ubisoft, which I think might potentially become an esport title, and some might say that's more female orientated because Roller Derby is quite traditionally female teams. But saying that, like, both genders can love the game, this could lead into more female teams for that esport title. I think it's not so much towards the game itself because those aren't necessarily gendered. I think it's more, like I said, with the community, whether we see more opportunities increasing, like we all mentioned previously throughout this call. It's like how we get more inclusive teams, whether it's female only then to mixed. Yeah, I'd say it's much more about the community than about the physical games themselves.
What do you think, Freya? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree on that. I think it's also about sort of the esports scene becoming larger as we've seen sort of year on year. The scene increases in size and the amount of people watching and the amount of people competing. And I think, I hate to use the word mainstream, but when it becomes more mainstream for people to be watching, people to be competing, and it opens up to more females, I think that's sort of only a positive thing. And I do agree with Alice, I don't think it's particularly based on the game itself. I think it's the communities that comes with it.
Actually, we do have one more question, only because it's from Dom, and Dom gets kind of top priority treatment, so we have to answer this. Exactly. Dom, I wish we had more time, because like I said, again, this question like is spent hours talking about. His question is, how do you feel about the term e-girl? So I guess, as we don't have too much time left, I'll just rattle through each one of you. Give me like a sentence on how you feel about the term e-girl. I'll come to you first, Sue.
Ooh, I think my sentence would be nobody likes labels. I think that's the one.
Amen. Freya?
Yeah, I think I'd probably echo Stu on that. I think there's some associations with that word that definitely don't represent the women, especially the women that I've been working with in this sphere. So yeah, not a correct label.
Alice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep carrying on, but like with everyone else, it's just not great. It's not nice representation, and yeah, I just don't like it, to be honest, quite simply.
And Morgan?
I think Sue had a mic drop moment there, so I'm going to leave it with what she said.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think I completely agree as well. Yeah. Again, if anyone actually really cares about what I think about it, tweet me and I'll talk to you about this.
Separate panel.
Honestly, separate panel. If there's a demand for it, we'll regroup and have another panel. But thanks so much for your time, guys. That was really, really interesting and brilliant. And if you guys want to, I think there's a command in the Twitch chat for all of these guys' social media and stuff, if you want to go follow them, or you have more questions you want to talk to them about. But for now, thank you so much to Alice, Morgan, Sue, and Freya for joining us this afternoon. So this, if you guys aren't familiar, we're all part of the British Esports Association Women in Esports Committee. There are 13 members, and it's an initiative set up to help promote inclusivity and diversity in the esports industry, and we'll be doing lots of other events and stuff for the rest of this year, so definitely keep an eye on it. And today's panel was part of the YANA program, which stands for You Are Not Alone. So this is the official day is actually tomorrow to kind of get everyone together. There's going to be loads of streams and games going on with people. I think I had a quick look on the program. People will be playing Minecraft, and I think some of the rugby players are getting together to play Fortnite. There'll be Excel are doing some League of Legends stuff. Basically, just to all raise a bit of money during this quarantine and lockdown to help families and different kind of people who aren't coping as well as some of the other people are. It's really, really good cause. So please, if you do have money, or if you do want to share this on social media, please go ahead and do it. And I believe Elliot will post a link of that as well in the Twitch chat, so you know where to go. Other than that, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Hope you guys had an informative hour and a fun Friday. I'm really sorry I'm going to keep bringing that up, because I just found out that the BA's time slot of the stream today is called the Fun Friday. Anyway, yeah, thanks for joining us, and hope to see you guys again soon.